everybody, and welcome to today's webinar on Reaccreditation 2018 Site Visits and Verification Procedures. My name is Kelly Mears. I'm the Specialist of Research Learning and Accreditation, and I'm joined here by my colleagues off camera right now, Julie Dennis and Chris Murray from the Quality and Performance Team, formerly known as Standards and Accountability, and Gretchen O'Sullivan, our Director of Data Quality here. We're excited to talk to you today about our site visits and verifications for Reaccreditation 2018. So our agenda is pretty straightforward today. We're going to start with an overview of site visits and verification reviews, dive pretty deep into the verifications, and probably we'll end up spending a bulk of our time covering that, and then give you sort of we'll break for questions in between, and then give you an idea of what you need to know for site visits. And then we're asking that you stay on the line whether you are up for site visits, verifications, or both, all the way through to the end, because we're going to be sort of talking about some overarching timelines, communications best practices, and pieces there. So hopefully you are able to join with us for the entire time, and of course we'll stop for questions throughout the presentation. So this slide should be really familiar to you all. This is a slide that was presented in January on Julie Dennis's Box.com training on January 12th. If you haven't seen that webinar, it is saved and recorded on the NRC. I definitely recommend you go back and check it out if you haven't already. It's got a lot of tips and tricks on how to use Box, what reaccreditation is, the whole process, and hopefully you're well on your way to uploading documents already. On that webinar, she talked a lot about components 1 and 2 and addressed component 3, and today we're going to dive pretty deep into component 4 here, site visits and verification procedures. So again, this slide should be pretty familiar to you all. We're going to dive pretty deep into the site visits and verification procedures, and if you're on the webinar, congratulations, because you're undergoing these. You were randomly selected by the national office to either undergo a site visit, a verification procedure, or both. State offices and national office staff were consulted throughout this process, and so everyone should be well aware that you're undergoing these and are excited to see what this is all about. So the site visits and the additional verification procedures are quality assurance mechanisms for the national office here to learn more about your operations, to confirm that we're providing high-quality services to students. And truthfully, you are just participating in a process here that helps to verify the quality of work that we're doing here on the ground. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and dive right into the verifications procedures and talk a little bit about those. Most of you on the call today, if you're an executive director, you received an email from me today providing you access to a Box.com folder that is titled CIS of your affiliate name verifications. Sent you an email there. You are the only one who currently has access to that folder, and then some folks here at the national office. But if you need to be extending that folder to folks, that's how we're going to be uploading information relating to these procedures. So if you need access to that, work with your executive director and work with me, and we'll get you access to that. And the reason we're doing that, separate from the Reaccreditation 2018 folder structure, is to ensure that sensitive student and personnel data is limited access. So if there's anyone else on your end or at the state office level who needs access to this, just let us know. We'll work with you and consider all of those pieces. All right. So a quick overview here of the verifications. These are a new process that were introduced in the 2017 reaccreditation cycle. Again, they're a quality assurance mechanism that we use to help assess risk in relation to the 3 standards that you see on the screen in front of you. We have our background checks, 3.8, 3.11 data verification, and 3.12 parent-guardian consent verification. All of these standards require you as the affiliate to conduct a verification of your own collection methods to ensure quality. So as an example, when you hire a new staff person, your background check procedures indicate to you what practices you need to take in order to make sure that a background check is completed prior to them working with students and sensitive student data. Another example there are your parent-guardian consent verifications. So twice per year, you are conducting a review of your case-managed students and making sure that you have a consent form to accompany each case-managed student. All right. So as the national office, we've decided to, in an effort to hold ourselves accountable for this data accuracy and compliance with use protection, we are undergoing this process as well. The national office will, as you do when you review your standards, take a look at the source data for a randomized selection of affiliates. So if you're on this call, you are part of that randomized selection. So what are we going to be doing in this process? We'll be asking for 100% of staff for whom a background check is required. We're asking for the documentation of that background check. And for data verification and parent-guardian consent verification, we'll be providing you a randomized list of 10% of students at 10% of schools serving case-managed students. We'll provide you that list later in the summer, and it will be a sort of randomized list that our data administrators here will be providing to you. You'll have about 4 weeks to turn around source data for data verification and the actual parent-guardian consent forms for parent-guardian consent. I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into these sort of individually, but I did also want to sort of flag for you here that the percentages and the numbers that we're using here for this process are not the same percentages and numbers that we use in the standards themselves. So, for example, Standard 3.12 requires that you review 100% of your students for parent-guardian consent. We are using these numbers in order to mitigate the lift on you all and to mitigate the lift on us, as we're going to be reviewing 39 affiliates throughout this process for base reaccreditation and 10 of you all for this. So in order to make sure that you can sort of undergo this whole process without too much undue burden, those are the percentages there. So just keep in mind that when you're doing your own verifications on your own affiliate site. As I talk a little bit more about these, I want to give you an idea of the timeline before, so you're not looking at me and saying, Kelly, you mean I have to do this by next week? No, not at all. So just go through this timeline so as you get this information, you're thinking about these dates in ahead. So June 1st, hopefully that date is clear in your heads, as clear as it is in mine and Julie's. All of your base reaccreditation documentation should be due on that date, and so that is everything that goes in your Reaccreditation 2018 folder, and hopefully you're well on your way already uploading documentation there. As we go through this process today, you may have moments where you say, ooh, I have data sharing limitations there, and I may have to do this in a different process. We are asking that on that date, June 1st, that you communicate with us or that you have already communicated with us any of those limitations, and we have helped to determine sort of an alternate process for achieving this data quality assurance piece. So like I said, Gretchen and the data quality team here will be reaching out to you later in the summer to identify and communicate to selected schools and students requiring affiliate source data for data verification and signed parent-guardian consent. At that same time, she's going to provide you your organizational chart that you provided during reaccreditation to confirm which staff will need a background check. So that's going to be on June 15th, a really important date there, because then 4 weeks later, July 16th, we will ask that you have submitted that relevant documentation and data for all three of the pieces, background check, data verification, and parent-guardian consent. And then, of course, as we get into September, once this verification sort of period has gone through, we will be conducting reviews for all of our reaccreditation affiliates, and we'll begin our site visits and additional follow-up. So we will have done a full review of your affiliate if you're being site visited prior to that site visit. And then once all of that happens, we'll present our reports to the governance committee and be back in touch with you. Throughout this whole timeline, we have committed to being communicative with you all, and so you won't just hear from us on these 4 dates or these 4 times. You'll be hearing from us throughout the process to keep you updated and aware of where we are, what we need from you, anything outstanding, any of those pieces. Right. So I'm going to go through each of these 3 components, and then we'll go ahead and break for questions if you have anything that is coming up as you think about how your affiliate is going to undergo these verification procedures. So to start, we have Business Standard 3.8 background checks, and the data that we'll be reviewing for this process are first your background check procedures, your background check spreadsheet, including the start dates of your employees, your organizational chart, and new, your electronic documentation of background check results within 3 years for 100% of your staff. So those first 3 items there are not bolded because they will have already been turned in to the national office prior to this sort of June 15th through July 16th date. They will be in your Box.com folders on June 1st. So we don't need you to re-upload that documentation unless you want to for your own purposes, but we'll have access to that through the Reaccreditation 2018 folder. So background check procedures and the background check spreadsheet are going to be found in folder 3.8, and we provide a template for the background check spreadsheet, but if you have a different version, a lot of affiliates have provided a version that includes all of the components of the standards, but maybe isn't our template. Totally fine. We'll accept that, and we'll use that to help guide this process. And what are we looking for in terms of the electronic documentation of background check results? So this is that new information that you're going to be dropping into the folder in the image below, that Box.com screenshot there. What do we mean by that? We mean the results that you receive from your vendor when you put your employees under a background check. So a lot of times it's sort of a report, sometimes it's a summary document, and it sort of gives sort of the results of the background check. We will be using your background check procedures to lean on when determining what is sort of clearance for the background check. So we're not necessarily looking for a clearance, we're looking for guidance from your background check procedures to tell us where to go and make sure that they meet both your procedures and our standards. A couple notes about Box here. So you're going to upload this documentation into the background check folder, but again, if you have data limitation or restrictions that make it so that you cannot use this platform for this purpose, we're just requesting that you communicate with us as soon as possible and absolutely before June 1st to let us know a different method of collection. I'll talk a little bit more about what some of those options may be for you. Anyone from here, did I miss anything on background checks that anyone wanted to include? Great. All right. So second component of the verification procedures are going to be your data verification. So the documentation that we are asking for here are the data verification procedures. Again, you've already uploaded this into folder 3.11, data verifications. And these will let us know what kind of source data that we can expect from your affiliate, and because a lot of times those practices are unique to your affiliate. Again, Gretchen will be sending you a randomized list of 10% of students at 10% of schools where case-managed students are served on June 15th. And a little note about that, so that does include your GYS schools and sites if you case-manage students at those sites. So we'll include those schools into our sort of randomization list if you case-manage students on those sites. Because the source data, as sort of mentioned here for evidence of enrollment status and the metric data for student ABC goals for all reporting periods can often look different affiliate to affiliate, I'm going to invite Gretchen O'Sullivan to just tell us a little bit about a little more context on what that tends to be. Gretchen.
Oh, hi, everybody. Okay. So we realize that, at a school level or affiliate level, there can be a lot of different ways that you get data. Some site coordinators have access directly to the school information system, which is wonderful, so they can pull grades and attendance and things like that for the students, but that doesn't happen everywhere. So we just need to kind of know what we're going to be looking at and make sure that you know in advance how you're going to get that information. So essentially, whatever way the site coordinator or case manager received things like grades, suspensions, attendance for those students, so the case managed students, where however they got it to put it into system initially is essentially the same way that you will be gathering that information. So maybe they are kept as kind of hard copy files, report cards, or something like that in an office. So that's what you'll have to kind of get out. But if it's, a report directly from the school information system that's run as of, June 1st or something like that, that's good too. So I just wanted to make sure people were aware that we don't have a very prescriptive or specific way that the metric data needs to be presented, but it will apply to whatever ABC goals that your students had. So if somebody has an attendance, behavior, and academic goal for the 17-18 school year, there should be every reporting period, so 3 or 4 typically pieces of data in there for every one of those goals. So.
Cool. No, I think a lot of that makes sense. I know it definitely helps provide a little bit of clarity for me. And if you have questions for Gretchen sort of generally, we'll stop after this next slide. And then if you feel like you need to have a conversation with us specifically about how your affiliate conducts data, just go ahead and reach out to me, and we'll help to set up either a phone call or do some email exchanges to help identify what documentation can be provided, what you have, and what's sort of available from there. So, one last slide, and then we'll go ahead and break for questions. Business Standard 3.12, Parent Guardian Consent Form Verifications. The documentation that you will have already provided on June 1st that we will be reviewing here are your Parent Guardian Consent Form procedures, the Consent Form template, and your TQS data report, which is pulled from the data that you enter in system. And we are asking for, in this sort of folder down here on Box, is the signed Parent Guardian Consent Form for all of the requested students. So for those same list of students that Gretchen and the data quality team share with you on June 15th, we are asking for those students' Parent Guardian Consent Forms. And we're going to review those against the system service entries to make sure that, or to ensure that services are not incurring before the consent form is signed. And so that's sort of how we're going to be conducting this review. One thing I do want to note here, if you have a student who has a service prior to a consent form, for instance, because they went on a field trip and they have a separate consent form for that field trip, just let us know, what the circumstances were around that. We'll be communicative with you throughout this process, and we understand that, things like that tend to happen. I also want to let you know, so System 2.0, awesome program, awesome system. It gives us the functionality of uploading our parent guardian consent forms directly into system. So if you do that, if your affiliate does that or wishes to do that instead of using this Box.com upload method, that is completely okay with us. We just ask that you let us know. Either shoot me an email, we'll track it on our end, we'll make sure that everyone here is informed, or let us know prior to that June 1st date, and we will review the signed parent guardian consent forms there. To clarify, that does not mean the checked boxes that indicate that you have a consent form. That's the actual form with the signature and a date for the actual consent. All right. So with that, we'll go ahead and break for questions. I think I've seen a couple of pop through the chat box. Julie, do you want to?
They must only come to you because if folks have questions, if you want to put it to all participants, then I can read it out loud for everyone.
So we'll go ahead and start with the first one here. To clarify, are we asking for the actual background check documentation? Yes. We are asking for the actual background check documentation, and one of the things that we are promising in this process, so while this information does get uploaded to Box.com, we are uploading it for a time-limited period, and so that information will be deleted after the review. Chris, do you want to address this a little?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I know there are some concerns around confidentiality. If that is a concern for you all locally, you can let us know, and we will sort of talk through sort of specific processes or workarounds that we need to conduct to address that. I know a lot of folks don't receive the actual background check documentation because the background checks are conducted by school districts. We still need to verify that the school district confirmed the result of those background checks. You also well, again, we can talk on an individual basis about different workarounds that we've seen used across the network to avoid any confidentiality issues that they may have. We feel pretty confident that our processes on our side limit the number of eyes on those background check results, and then ultimately those results are deleted, as Kelly mentioned.
Yeah, and to clarify there, like also what Chris is saying, so if you do work with a school district and they're the ones who conduct your background checks, we just need to see sort of that indication that the staff member is cleared that you receive from them. So we do understand, and of course we'll work with you individually.
Or cleared or meet the requirements of the school district to work within the school with students, yeah.
Thank you. Gretchen, I'm going to point these two questions for you because they look to be about data here. Do you want to see here on this third screen?
Oh, I can actually read it.
So to read the questions out loud for folks, clarification question, do we need to be keeping copies of source data for system entries?
Well, essentially, yes.
Come hang out.
Hi, guys. Figure out just. Essentially, yes. There needs to be a way for people to verify that the information that was entered in the system was correct. We can, talk more specifically with individual affiliates that have a concern about this, or there's some sort of, really special circumstance where there's no lingering record of the source data, but essentially, like the examples that I gave, that information should still exist at least at the school level. So even if the affiliate doesn't have that source data in their own files, whether it's electronic or hard copies, that's not exactly necessary, but it should at least be accessible again by the at the school level, the site coordinator, wherever they got the information originally. Hopefully you should be able to get that information again if you don't still have it. So does that answer that particular question? Okay, great. And I do see the other question.
Yes. So the second question here, which again we're gonna ask you to address here. What if the student's baseline is from mid-year? So example, students whose baseline is quarter 2 would not have progress entries for quarters 1 or 2.
That is an excellent question. Thank you for clarifying that part. And this is actually relevant to for the parent consent dates and how we're comparing those to the dates of service in system. We can do that similarly for the metric data. So if a student didn't get on the CIS caseload or get parent consent until February, then we wouldn't expect to see metric data from the quarters before that. So that's a good point to make. For a specific student that joined kind of mid-year, then we would only see maybe 2 or 3 entries per goal, per metric.
And I can take that last comment from Nancy.
Okay.
Oh.
Yep, so Nancy, you had mentioned that school systems will not provide the actual background check documentation. Yes, that's what we're saying. So, but we do need verification from the school district or whatever that record is that is maintained at the affiliate from the district that individual underwent a background check and was cleared to work with students in the school per the school district's policies if they are the ones that are providing the background check. So we understand that depending on the vendor or the person or the organization that conducts the background check, we may not have the actual results. We do need to see verification that those background checks were completed and conducted in accordance with the affiliate's policies or the school district's policies.
Wonderful. And one of these questions actually reminded me too of another point that I wanted to make. And so, we had questions around if a student who is provided to you from Gretchen and the data quality team is no longer case managed and maybe was not case managed for a considerable amount of time, just let us know that. We will end up replacing that student. So we're going to ask that you let us know that sooner rather than later in that sort of 4-week turnaround period of time, because we will be replacing that student with another name for whom you will need to provide data for. Pause here for a minute or 2 longer. All right. Cool. So we can return to questions here about either this or site visits at the end, but I want to go through site visits just briefly here, and then we can talk about broader timelines and best practices. So site visits, 10% of the reaccreditation cohort are undergoing site visits. A site visit is a 1.5-day visit at the affiliate office and 2 school sites where the national office will be able to take a look at, just get some additional insights into the affiliate's operations. So we will have at least 2 reviewers from the national office visiting your affiliate, and we'll be conducting interviews with a number of folks from the affiliate office. So that would include the executive director and the affiliate office staff, your board members, including your chairperson. We would ask to sort of be a part of a significant partner panel and meet with those significant partner representatives. And while we are on both sites, we would want to meet with the site coordinators, principals, and student groups from each of those schools. So on the right side of the screen there, you see sort of an example agenda. We will be sending you this sort of sample agenda along with sort of a set of guidance and guidelines a little bit later. We'll get on a phone call with you all. I'll be reaching out to you shortly after this to actually schedule an orientation call later into sort of May, and we'll be working with you to set the schedule there, and then we'll check in with you about 2 to 3 weeks before your site visit to make sure that everything is aligned, you have everything you need from us. I'm just making sure that this does. I'm seeing a note here that the screen may not be shared, so I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and try it one more time just to make sure that it's being shared for everyone. If you're only seeing my face, you can actually go ahead and click out of the face, and it should take you to the automatic, like, where my screen is shared so you can see the presentation there. Our site visits are going to be, okay, great, good, we got it fixed. Site visits are going to occur August 13th through September 28th, and of course, we recognize that Leadership Town Hall falls September 10th through 14th, so we're not going to schedule any visits for that period of time because we want you to be able to join if possible. And then I had sent out a doodle poll in January, I believe is when I first went out to folks to reserve those dates. I'll send it out again after this presentation to those of you who are going through and getting a site visit so that you can reserve your date. We recommend that you sign up as soon as possible because those are first come, first serve. Just make sure that you sign up for those dates. We recognize that some of you may not be able to schedule those now based off of schedules at your schools. We want to make sure that those visits happen during the school year so that we can get on site with folks. And so if you have questions around whether or not that's going to happen, just go ahead and let us know, hey, I can't fill out the doodle poll until X date. We'll work with you on that. Right. And then, so kind of a funky little piece here, if you are going through verification and you would like to use your site visit to provide some of the source data that has been requested, so an example is maybe your parent guardian consent forms, if you would like us to review those on site, we are happy to arrange that. Again, please let us know probably well in advance of that June 1st date so that we can help to arrange that and make sure that it will fit within the agenda of the 1.5 days that we are spending on the affiliate site. Are there any questions about the site visits? I know I saw a couple sort of logistical questions come through here. Yes, the PowerPoint will be shared after this presentation, so you'll be able to refer back to it. We'll do the whole recording and everything as well. And again, more information will come out about those site visits when we have those orientation calls, but we do ask that you sign up for what dates are preferred for you sooner rather than later so that we can help to schedule who will be going on those site visits. We'll need to book some travel and things like that. So logistically, we'll like to get those hammered out. Cool. All right, so I'm going to pass it over to Julie to just talk about timeline here and great.
Thanks, Kelly. All right, so hopefully folks have seen this timeline already during the January 12th Box.com training. This is the timeline for reaccreditation for 2018. And you can see here that, as we discussed, June 1st is the date when Box.com closes, and you should have all your documents uploaded by that date. And then you can see that we've added in the verification source data due date for those going through the verifications for who are on this webinar. And that date is July 16th. So this is a very important date. Mark it down in your calendar. This is when, again, that data, the source data is due, unless you've made other arrangements prior. And if you have made other arrangements, then we do anticipate that you'll be contacting us on or before the June 1st original reaccreditation deadline. The other thing that I just wanted to point out, as Kelly mentioned, we are going to be more communicative throughout the process, but just please keep in mind that we do not anticipate getting the reports back to you until the fall/winter of 2018. It takes a long time to go through all the documentation for reaccreditation, as you can imagine, and we put the vote in front of the governance committee, and that committee only meets once per month. So just keep that in mind, that, you know, as we come up on deadlines, fall/winter 2018 would be the time that we give you your final report. All right, so the next slide here, a couple of rules of the road. So this is also something that you might have seen in our webinar in January, but we've tweaked it to be very specific to the verifications and site visits here for today. So overall, affiliates should attempt to use clear naming conventions, and this is particularly important, you know, when we're reading through background check procedures, verification procedures. So name them clearly so we know which procedures we're reading, and same thing for any data, or excuse me, any you know, spreadsheets or things that you might provide to prove that you've done the background checks on your employees and all those who need background checks from your organization. For data verification, again, schools included in the random sample are any schools at which students are case managed, and this includes general use services if there are case managed students. And, you know, as we said, you know, if it happens that maybe that student was on the case management plan and has since gotten kicked off, just let us know as soon as those names come to you on June 15th, and we'll get you a different name for a different student to pull the source data. If you have the data sharing limitations or restrictions, again, just let us know. We are very happy to work with you. Last year we did some screen sharing. We are also able to do it during site visits, as if you are getting a site visit and going through the verifications as well. And so we're pretty flexible, and we really want to work with you to make this whole process as streamlined as possible. And we would ask that you let us know of any of those deadlines, limitations by June 1st, as I mentioned. So site visits, really exciting for us at National to see the wonderful work that you're doing on the ground. And so we just kind of are able to also look at some source documentation if you so choose, and are going through a site visit. And we are very flexible with the schedules. We understand that, you know, especially for the principal meetings or board meetings, when we meet with board members, you know, they live very busy lives as well, and things change day to day, so we just ask that you keep us updated when that template comes out for the schedule. If something were to change between the time that you send it in to us and the time we actually go on the site visit, just let us know, and we're happy to adjust accordingly. I think those are all.
So wanted to add one that I actually had meant to mention on an earlier slide here. So staff sets the deadlines instead of the timeline being June 15th through June 16th for most of this documentation to be sort of uploaded into this Box.com space. However, you know who your staff members are, and we are conducting a review of 100% of staff members. So there is really no limitation for you to start uploading those background check clearance forms or review forms, documentation into Box.com today if you wanted. So we will confirm with you on June 15th if, with the list, with your organizational chart that you provide, who we kind of anticipate seeing in that box. But of course, you know your staff and you know your procedures, and so if you choose to start uploading those early, the box is yours to do with as you would like. So if you'd like to add folders in there, please do. If you'd like to change naming conventions, please do. And then if you'd like to start uploading your information relating to background checks, please feel free. Anything else?
And just very quickly, we are going to be doing a bunch of webinars and recordings for over the spring as we prepare for Reaccreditation 2018. So this webinar will be available on the NRC shortly. We also have February's TQS deep dives already on the NRC, and then we have the fourth Thursday of every month for March, April, and May. We're going to be doing TQS deep dives and open office hours beginning at 3 o'clock. So next Thursday, we'll actually be discussing some of the nuances with the verification standards. So we'll be talking about business standards 3.8, 3.11, and 3.12 more in depth, and figure out, I'm going to offer some tips and tricks on kind of what we saw with the cohort from Reaccreditation 2017, and maybe how you can, kind of improve upon what they've given us to ensure that your procedures are covering all aspects of the standard and meeting the intent. If you have any questions about those standards prior, you can actually email them to me, and I'll be sure to address them on the webinars. But if you have any questions about this process, specifically for verifications and site visits, you can email Kelly Mears, and then if you have questions specifically about data, you can email Gretchen.
And then actually, so the first webinar on there, the recording, and I'll send you the links to this PowerPoint, and the recording here is linked, is actually to the webinar that was conducted last summer when Julie did the super awesome TQS business standards webinars. And so we discussed verification procedures and policies on that webinar, which was really helpful if you're still looking to create your verification procedures. Hopefully those are sort of well underway and already being practiced, but if you're looking to sort of develop those and fine-tune them and make sure that they are up to par, that's a really helpful recording to watch as well.
Go back and monitor the chat. Sure.
All right, so that's the end of our webinar today. Hopefully there was a lot of information in there for you to digest. And we will be checking back in with you in the next couple of weeks to make sure that that was sort of all communicated to you, and the expectations for you in the summertime are sort of clear and manageable. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, we're going to be here on the line for a little while. So if you have any questions, we'd be happy to either unmute you if you'd like to use the raise your hand function in the participants box, or use the chat box to ask any other questions. I see a question that came in here. It says, our checks are run online. Do we need a report from each staff member or a report reflecting that all staff members were checked, cleared, and the date conducted? So I'm going to answer that question.
The latter.
The latter. We are looking for a report that reflects that all staff members were checked, cleared, and the date conducted. Yeah.
Yep, that would be fine. That would be acceptable. I mean, it could be either one, but if that is the easier one for you to submit to us, then that's okay. Also, and that reminds me, and I forgive me, Kelly, if you said this, if your background check vendor conducts ongoing background checks, we understand that, and you just need to let us know. So. Similarly.
Right, and that should be reflected in your procedures.
Yes.
Which is how we would know, but then you could tell us too, which would be helpful.
Yep. Yes, and please, it's helpful to let us know those things so that we aren't, sure, we can find that information out by doing a little bit of digging, but I think sometimes if we can't find the conclusive answer to that question, if you don't let us know, we tend to come back to you with hey, you didn't do this correctly, and or provide us with the right information, or your procedures don't meet standards, and we'd rather not do that if we have that information up front. So the more you let us know, the more we know, the better we are able to respond based on the particular circumstances of your affiliate.
Yeah. And I would say to that point, Julie talked about this on her Box.com webinar. There's a really awesome feature within Box.com to be able to do Box notes. So feel free to use those to kind of help provide context to if there is sort of something that maybe isn't unclear, immediately clear, but doesn't require sort of us to review and work with you to find an alternate process of uploading, but you just want to kind of give us a heads up or a note, please use those box notes. They're really helpful and really easy to use.
And so I think that broadly is sort of a theme across the board on all of these verifications, and with the, as Kelly noted, with the reaccreditation process. This, I think we try to create a process that works for as many affiliates as possible. It's sort of the generic, easiest, sort of most recognizable process. But these things happen differently. Each affiliate, each school district, each community, be it based on your access to source data, as Gretchen was discussing, be it sort of who conducts your background checks, and then what vendor you're using and what types of checks you're doing locally. That varies across all affiliates, and so we try to create the most sort of fully encompassing process that we can, or the most sort of simple and standardized process, but recognize that there's going to be some different, some alterations on the ground or some variations there, and just let us know, and we're willing to work with you and be flexible around what you can demonstrate. Our intent is not to sort of dig into your business and check you and come up from behind and sort of, ensure that you're doing anything or to catch you in something. So we really do want to be flexible around this. Our goal is to verify that these policies are being put in place on the ground, and to hold ourselves and our network, accountable for these commitments around youth protection and quality model implementation. So that's our goal, not to catch you or to be punitive in any way. So the intent is to work together so everyone gets reaccredited, and ideally a smooth process that isn't too much of a burden across the board.
Well, if there are no other questions on the line at this time, we'll go ahead and give you back about 20 minutes of your day, which is really exciting. So you have my email address there on the screen, nearsk@sysnet.org. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. I'll follow up with an email to you all with a recording and with the presentation slides and with the link to the doodle poll. So if you have not already signed up for that, you can do that then, and any other relevant information that you need.
And we'll stay on the line for just a couple minutes, just in case those questions are still bubbling in your head, but folks who want to go back to their regular lives can do that. Thank you, everyone.